If you're searching for a meaningful spiritual experience, look no further than St. Anthony's Parish in Allston, Massachusetts. Join us at 43 Holton Street in between Soldiers Field Road and the Mass Pike. Immerse yourself in the complete St. Anthony's Parish encounter through our 10 o'clock a.m. chanted Mass. Whether you're a Catholic seeking a parish to call home or someone looking for spiritual guidance, our welcoming community is here for you. Visit our website at www.stanthonyalston.org for more information. St. Anthony's Parish, where faith finds a home. Welcome to the voice of St. Anthony Parish from Allston, Massachusetts, right here on WROL, 950 AM, 100.3 FM. And you can also hear us at CatholicAudiomedia.com. That's CatholicAudiomedia.com. And we are here every single Monday through Friday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And you can also hear us after 3:16. Yes, I picked that time for a reason on your favorite podcast platform. Look for Catholic Audio Media on your podcast platform. Unless you're a fisherman, then look at it on your Codpast platform. Sorry, just kidding. Podcast platform. And all one word, Catholic Audio Media, except on Spotify. It's 3 words, Catholic Audio Media. Okay, so we're talking about this funeral at St. Patrick's in New York that happened several weeks ago, and using that to talk about how to celebrate a funeral, and that's the proper word, by the way, celebrate a funeral in such context and also in general. So we talked yesterday that after the opening prayer, we have the opening prayer. You begin with the sprinkling of the holy water. You have the pall put on, the white pall put on the casket. You have the candle is already lit. And then you sprinkle, I usually invite a eulogy at that time. And then we have the opening prayer. Okay. So the next part are the readings that talk to us about God's love and God's call. And they're all different readings. And, some funerals have the family, or I always invite the family to come talk to me. They do what their readings are. And other funeral homes help them choose it, whatever the case may be. But some funeral homes allow the priest to choose the gospel. I always like it when the family does. But in this case, the gospel I would choose would be the story of the raising of Lazarus. And you might say, why? In the context here, you have this transgender activist deceased in the casket. You have people who showed that they really didn't understand the context of a funeral, and you do that story. Why? What do we know about Lazarus? Well, the only thing we know about Lazarus is A, he was raised from the dead, B, he was the brother of Martha and Mary, and C, he was a sinner. Now, how do we know he was a sinner? Well, he was a sinner because those are the people Jesus hung around. You don't see him hanging around at the Pharisees. We see Jesus at events where Pharisees may be, but he hung around the sinners. And we know that whole story in the Bible about the woman who is washing Jesus' feet, and the other one, the Pharisee, going, well, if he really knew who this woman was, he would never allow this. And Jesus, realizing this, explained to him why he is allowing this woman to wash his feet. So we see all that. So those are the 3 things we know about Lazarus: the brother of Martha and Mary, he was raised from the dead, and he was a sinner. Another thing I always add on the Holy Week is because of him, people came to the faith, came to follow Jesus, and so the Pharisees wanted to kill Jesus and Lazarus. And I always say, how evil do you have to be to want to kill a person who was raised from the dead? There you go. So it's important to understand that that's all we know. So you have all these people who we know are sinners because we all know all people are sinners, but we know these people are sinners because those were the people that Jesus hung around, and those would be the people would hang around with Jesus who hung around, you see? So we don't know what kind of sinners they were. We all only know that they were sinners. Reminds me of an old story, this is true, of Billy Graham. And it was during the summer where they were trying to figure out who shot JR. Remember? It was this big mystery and you wouldn't know until September. And Billy Graham, at one of his crusades, says, I know who shot JR. And, people waiting for the next line. And he goes, it was a sinner. And everyone laughed because they know. He was... you have this gathering of sinners. So, and one thing that's important to know, if people in the crowd said, you're calling us the sinners, do you know that except for, and this is Catholic teaching, except for Mary, the only persons who end up in heaven are sinners? Do you know that? No, I know some people who are evangelicals will say, well, we believe Mary's a sinner. Well, we Catholics don't, so we'll leave it at that. The only people who go to heaven are sinners. And how do you get to heaven? You acknowledge your sin, and it opens the door to the grace of God. That's why acknowledging sin is so important. You acknowledge your sin, and it allows the grace of God to enter into your life. So Jesus is calling people to acknowledge their sin, but here's what happens. He shows to sinners the power of the gospel and the love of God, and you can see that in that gospel. So that's why I would choose that gospel, and I would preach from that perspective to this particular group of mourners. Now that you've explained what's going on, and then I would bring that in because that would be important. And do we know for a fact that the, I don't know the right word, but the people who were, we'll say, like whatever that would mean in this context, like the mourners at that funeral were not like the ones who would surround the tomb, Lazarus' tombs, crying that he had died? Do we know that? We don't know anything about them, but we know that they are sinners, but we also don't know what kind of sin they committed or sins they were committing. That's all we know, and Jesus is preaching grace. So, understanding what I've said so far, the first hour would be like a wake service. Eucharist would be removed from the tabernacle. The second hour, you'd begin the funeral service. You wouldn't do a eulogy in that case because you already had them done at the wake service. And now we have the readings, now we have the homily, and then you would have the prayer of the faithful. Now you had a prayer of the faithful that happened at the funeral in St. Patrick's. Basically, it would be good if the priest, if he could have, which again, he wasn't able to, work with them on what intentions they want to do, but then you'd have the prayer of the faithful. Okay. One of the things that happened during this funeral, by the way, is during certain things, people applauded. And I would explain why you don't applaud except in very rare circumstances at a Catholic Mass. And the rare circumstances are part of the liturgy. For example, in an ordination, applause is given as a sign that the people approve that the candidates are about to be ordained. That's part of the liturgy. However, in any other kind of mass, like for example, if you have the priest who's preaching, and at the end of his preaching, everyone applauds, the priest should take that as an insult or a severe criticism. Because here's the problem with applause. Applause takes the whole focus off of God and puts it on the person whom you are applauding. But second thing about the applause that's important is if you applaud a priest or anyone who says anything during a funeral, eulogies are a little exception, but says anything during a funeral, if you applaud them, then you have just acknowledged they've told you what you want to hear. And of course, at a funeral mass, you may not hear what you want to hear, and that's the role of the priest, to tell you the truth, and it may not be what you want to hear. So you go from there. So anyway, that's what you would do. You'd have the prayer of the faithful, and if there was applause, you may explain definitely another context, you may explain, please don't, because it changes the dynamic. We're offering the prayers up to God, and if you're applauding, you're saying, oh, we're happy that this person has said these words, but that's out of context for a funeral. And then this was a funeral service, so then you would end with the Our Father and the funeral rites, which call for, the reminder, a call for what God is calling people to do. Now, the homily, which I didn't go into that much, I went to a little, also would cite what is happening at a funeral. The people are gathered together and they are saying to the Lord, welcome this, we're praying to you that you welcome such and such a person into your kingdom. At their baptism, and I said, if they're not baptized, then if it's an adult and they're not baptized and they really don't have a connection to the Catholic Church, you really can't do the funeral because it's out of context. But that said, they're baptized. What I always say is you're telling the Lord or asking the Lord, you gave this person a promise at their baptism. Come follow me and I will lead you into eternal life. We're asking you to make good on your promise. And that's what a funeral happens. We're asking you to make good. We're asking you to remember that. We're asking you to forgive the person their sins. And if anyone gets offended that you bring up the person's sins, they don't understand. Remember something. Only sinners go to heaven. That's it, except for Mary, but she's there. Only sinners go to heaven. That's the rule. So if you say, well, you call that person a sinner, only sinners go to heaven. We're going to talk more on Monday. In the meantime, have yourself a blessed day, and we will see you on Monday on the 4th week of Lent. I want to call your attention to Catholic TV, which offers great faith-filled, family-friendly programming 24 hours a day. You can find your cable channel at www.getcatholictv.com, and you can watch online on the free apps or check out the YouTube channel. Daily Mass, Rosaries, the Divine Mercy Chaplet, and the Our Lady of Perpetual Help Novena are all available online and on demand. Check out CatholicTV.com. If you're searching for a meaningful spiritual experience, look no further than St. Anthony's Parish in Allston, Massachusetts. Join us at 43 Holton Street in between Soldiers Field Road and the Mass Pike. Immerse yourself in the complete St. Anthony's Parish encounter through our 10 o'clock a.m. chanted Mass. Whether you're a Catholic seeking a parish to call home or someone looking for spiritual guidance, our welcoming community is here for you. Visit our website at www.stanthonyalston.org for more information. St. Anthony's Parish, where faith finds a home.